Hi, hope you're having a good day where you are. Today's episode is a little different. I recorded Pottag preparatory melodies to solo work a long time ago, and I went back and listened to it, and I didn't think the recording was very good. So I decided to redo it. You may be able to see that from the window behind that it is no longer springtime, so it doesn't fit in with the other series, but be that as it may, here we go. I heard someone say, as a matter of fact, one of my students shared with me in his lesson this week, said the tuba player from their quintet says that the only people who can play slow and soft are virtuosos. And I thought that was pretty funny. And yet there's some truth to it. So I was thinking about this, and it's like, John Williams has written a lot of music for the Olympics, and he wrote one of the things he wrote was Citius Altius Fortius, which is the Olympic theme. That's Latin, for those of you who know. It is faster, higher, louder, basically. Faster, higher, stronger. And so what we're going to do today is actually do slower, softer, instead of faster and higher and stronger. So it's a good way to think of it. And most trumpet players don't like to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and play number 3 for you, and try and keep you involved musically. It'll take a little patience on your part, but this is a listening exercise. So every time you hear somebody playing, regardless of who they are, you can say, oh, they missed a note, or they played that note out of tune, or whatever. Or you can listen for the music. So hopefully some of the music will come through, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, here we go. Okay, well, playing slow is not one of our favorite things to do, and playing soft as trumpet players is generally not one of our favorite things to do. Obviously, some people are better at it than others, but it's a good thing to practice. Think about this: if you're a commercial player, which I did a lot of, you play in a big band, you play in a salsa band, you play in wedding bands, you play, any kind of commercial genre. Generally, playing loud is what's important. Playing soft isn't required all that much. You probably never play below mezzo forte, maybe mezzo piano in a big band. Most of it is, forte and above. So it's really great to practice these kinds of things because we don't do them. General rule is practice what you don't do in your regular daily work and work on the things that you're not particularly good at. So a couple things I want to point out in this, and one of them is a sense of direction. The slower you go, and this is why it's for virtuosos, they're showing what they can do. Can they keep the sense of movement forward all the time, regardless of how slow the tempo gets? And there are ways of doing this, and most of it is mental. I call this conductor's mind. So if you were conducting it, you feel that, what are you doing? Well, you're just playing one note. So that note has to feel like it's going someplace. If you're sustaining the note, it's the same thing. So I'm going to play the beginning again. And I want you to listen for how I'm doing that. I'm actually going to be doing several things. So what I did is I gradually changed the dynamic. Now that's pretty subtle. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to hear it in the recording. I hope so, because a lot of these things are very, very subtle. I also did some other things. I changed the color of the sound. And I changed the dynamic. And many times color and dynamics go together. When we play softer, it generally sounds warmer. This is exactly the way our voice works. So you can try this yourself singing. I'm not going to demonstrate right now, but for what it's worth, just use your voice, speak in a normal tone of voice, then sing a pitch in that normal tone of voice, and crescendo and decrescendo, and see what your body needs to do in order to keep the sound projecting into the room in order to sustain the quality of the sound. It's exactly the same thing we're doing when we play a wind instrument. So this is one of the most important critical things to work on. Now, I know where a lot of the problems are for people because I have the same problems. So why don't we talk about those? The first one is making that shift into the low register. Most people have trouble with that. Some people will do something like, so they'll play a lot louder. They'll play a lot louder on the low G. Other people will do, and this is my tendency, will do it like this. And you get a fluff of attack or an air ball on the note because you're not releasing the air through the note. You're being too careful with it. So what you want is actually very simple. Sustain the flow. Now, yes, there's a breath mark which indicates a phrase mark here, but when you lift, da, 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 da. Now with our voice, relatively, that's a lot easier to do than on the trumpet. Practice that. The way to do it is connect it as a slur first. So you have continuous sound between the two notes. Then when you put a lift, a phrase, take a breath in that place, then when you come in again, you've continued mentally the line and your body is ready for that note to speak. You're not stopping and starting again. So it's a psychological thing, it's a physical thing, it's an artistic thing, a musical thing. And these are all ways that you have to approach it in order to get more comfortable and get more control, which is what we all want. Something else I can mention is it's a little bit confusing at the beginning. You see what looks like a slur marking, and then the notes have staccato on them. And so this is open to interpretation. You can hear what I'm doing is playing legato. So a sustained sound. it's a taste. And feel free to play with this. This is the fun part for me. It's like, how should that sound? It can have all kinds of different character. A great little exercise to do, or a technique you can use, is take this music to a friend of yours who plays another instrument. If I had my wife play this on the piano, I think you would actually be amazed, because she will make a line, and she would be doing that on a percussion instrument that can't sustain the sound. As soon as you press the key on the piano, the note speaks and it's immediately decaying. But she'll be thinking the line, and she'll be showing us, the listeners, the musical line by what she's doing with the quality of the articulation and the color of the sound and the dynamics of the sound, as we talked about before. So mostly these things are not things to do by thinking about how to do them, or even thinking that you should do them. They're things that can be accomplished by listening to the music in your mind. And if you don't have a good reference already in there, you need to stock the library a little bit, and that means listen to the music that you hear great players play and recognize these characteristics. And all great players share these musical expressive characteristics. Okay, there's another big problem that I always used to have with this. There are big dynamic changes. And you're going along, it's nice and gentle and soft, and all of a sudden it says forte. So I want to share an idea with you, and again, this comes from my wife. She's been a very good influence on me over the years. She says, dynamics are more about attitude than about volume. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. I think of it as a character issue. It's what is the attitude, what is the character, what is the mood, what is the, I've said this before, what is the tone of voice? What is the emotion behind the sound? When you figure that out, then it's pretty easy to judge for yourself whether you're reaching your musical goal or not. So I'm going to make the transition from piano to forte. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I want you to listen for this. I think you heard the transition. I'm setting up the next thing I'm going to do, but I'm also thinking, what do I want that forte to sound like? So there's something very important that all trumpet players, classical trumpet players, need to do. You need to learn how to play dolce when you're playing forte, fortissimo, fortissimo. This is what the great lead players used to do. And it's changed during the modern era, but people like Conrad Gazzo, and today, I think that Mr. Bergeron and others, Arturo Sandoval, can play with tremendous beauty in the extreme upper register and extreme volumes. That all comes from what you want, if you're willing to work on it. So that's what I'm trying to encourage you to do by posting these little videos. So I did something there that's interesting. It's forte. It's not just forte. I'm going to play it as a slur first. So I tried to play that very smooth and connected. Now I'm going to add the accents to it. But I'm still thinking the line that I just played when I played a slur. It has a shape. So there's a sense of direction and a sense of weight, and then release of the weight. Always listen for that when you're listening to these phrases. Then you get to decide what style you want to play in. And the wonderful thing is, if you heard, half a dozen very accomplished trumpet players play this, you would hear different musical ideas. That, to me, that's tremendous fun. That's exactly what we want. It's like, wow. And then, as Mr. Gould says, steal all the ideas you can. Just listen and let that kind of cultivate your own sense of the possibilities, and then you can develop your own style. It's very important to use your own voice, but you can't find it unless you recognize that voice in others first, I think. It doesn't come from nowhere. Okay, so at the end there's something interesting happened, and I'll show you a little thing that I always do. Just going to the second ending, look what happens. That's all that's going on there musically. That's all that's happening with the melody, and the melody is outlining a harmonic progression. And it's happening very slowly. So it's hard to maintain that idea, but if you realize you're just playing down a scale and changing octaves, then you can always think about where you're going. So I'll play the end once more. Now, if you were here with me in person, you'd hear that I was playing too soft. I'm sure you can hear the quality of the sound change a little bit. Trumpet's a loud instrument. When we try and play too soft, we kind of lose the quality a little bit. When I was in the BSO, I sat behind the horn section a lot, and one of the players, who's now deceased, Jay Wadenful, could play really, really soft. Now, of course, horn players can cheat. They take their hand and they put it in the bell, and they can muffle the sound. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to muffle the sound. We want to keep it brilliant and ringing freely and projecting. So when you play soft, see if you can keep the sound, the ring in the sound, all the way down to nothing, and then play with the color. Now, I think you can tell from today's session, I gave you quite a few ideas. The main thing you need to do is listen for these ideas when you hear other musicians play, especially those who you really respect, and you'll start to recognize these things. Then when you listen to yourself play, especially when you're recording, listen specifically for these things. I think when you do that, you're going to learn a tremendous amount, and it makes practice a whole lot more interesting. So please join me for the next episode when you have time, and enjoy your practice. I'll see you later on. Bye-bye.